right. Hi, my name is Matt Abedi. I performed at the Magnet Theater in New York City. New York City, baby. For over 10 years, something like that. And I performed in several different cities, including New York, Washington, D.C., and Houston at various theaters. And, I've done some stuff. So I'm not the world's greatest improviser, but I want to give people advice. And if you find this stuff helpful, that would be great. Smash the like button, hit subscribe, etc. Okay, so I've been promising myself I'm going to make these videos shorter and more concise and faster, and this is take two because the last video I went crazy. So we're gonna start again. This video is going to be about performing to a small audience, and I will say performing to a small audience is really good for you. If you are getting into improv, before worrying about getting cast at the theater, and you should try to get cast at the theater, and your theater should have some sort of program where you can get cast and you can perform regularly. But I would almost say build an indie team even before you think, a little bit, like a teeny tiny bit before you think you're ready to be cast at the theater on a regular night, whatever the regular night at your theater looks like. And the reason for it is you will have to perform to small audiences. And improv communities kind of have this thing that's great, but it also has this not great part to it. Okay. The really great thing about improv communities are there are tons and tons of people. Everyone's very forgiving. Everyone wants to laugh. Everyone's on your side. And so if you do a move that's a little sideways or the joke doesn't fully land, people are still game to laugh. And they're game because you're having fun. They want to have fun with you. Okay? The problem is sometimes, I'm not saying this has happened to me, but sometimes you develop enough of a reputation at the theater that people know who you are, and they want to laugh because they like you, because they've gotten to know who you are. And so when you do a move that's very like you, whether or not it's a good or bad move, you get big laughs, right? And I've done it. I've even done things where I'm I know that people at this theater know who I am and that I can do this and people will laugh because I did it. You do not get that whenever you're out on the indie scene. You're more likely to have an audience that's half and half, improvisers and non-improvisers. You are more likely to run into folks who do not know who you are. And what that does is it makes you double down and learn your improv fundamentals in a very, very big way. And if things don't work well, you can go look for some feedback, either from your coach, a teacher, whoever it ends up being. Because, and I've seen this, sometimes you hear feedback and you think that you're executing on the feedback until you are in an environment where you're really being tested. And then you find out you're not totally following the feedback. I had this a lot with I really had a hard time, still I would say have a hard time playing grounded scenes. Not a grounded scenes guy. I find it personally, for my taste, I sometimes find grounded scenes a little boring, a little touch boring, which is going to really fly in the face of some advice I'm about to give you, but it's true. That's a weak point for me. And I thought for the longest time that I was doing more grounded scenes, and it wasn't until I was doing indie scenes regularly that I realized I had a long way to go in terms of my acting skill, in terms of my investment in the scene, and so on and so forth. Okay, so doing indie shows, playing to small audiences, I cannot recommend this enough. Yes, it is uncomfortable, but it pays dividends for you because you will grow in a very big way. I mean, you'll even notice this. There are some people who don't really build an indie team, or they build an indie team. They're very in and out, but they get onto a house team at a theater, and then they suddenly just get so much better. And the reason isn't because they were already really good, which they were good enough to get cast. That's great. The reason is because they perform once a week and they get a practice once a week, right? And they might even do some more stuff. So sometimes you'll find out they also have an indie team or a sketch team or whatever, and now they're doing comedy 4 or 5 times a night, 4 to 5 times a week. So they're really accelerating in a very big way. The reason why I say do it a little bit before you're ready, right, is you will start that sort of like that exponential growth because you'll give it to yourself. Okay? The small price that you have to pay for is you have to perform to a small audience pretty regularly. All right. So this is going to be 5 tips for performing to a small audience. Along with, at the very bottom, I'm going to give you just a couple warm-ups that I think help out a teeny tiny bit with this. Okay, very first piece of advice is, oh yeah, we're doing this way faster. Okay, first tip here is, and I said this in the last video, I'm going to do it again. I'm really big on this hill. I'm very big on this. You have to kind of acknowledge that what you're doing is deeply uncool. And I think it's important to remember, like, the early improv innovators, inventors, founders in the United States, at least, also had a debate in Chicago about whether or not improv really was an art form on its own. Is it something you put in front of an audience and is valuable entertainment on its own? Or is improv more like a theater game or a warm-up or something that we do in the writer's room or whatever amongst other theater people, where we generate ideas and we turn those ideas into real theater, quote unquote, right? Real theater being like scripted theater, a character or whatever, sketch, monologue, stand-up comedy, blah, blah, blah. And what we see now in most modern improv theaters and communities is a hybrid of the two, which is really big insular-ish improv communities where sometimes non-improvisers show up, and there's a very large class of people who take level 1 to level 2, maybe a little bit beyond that, aren't gonna like fully do improv, but are are kind of like half fans, half hobbyists, right? So improv is a little insular. And if you want to not just get good at improv, but get really good at comedy or be a funnier person or really work on the social skills that improv provides for you, I would suggest, you've got to step out of the theater and back in and so on and so forth. So one of the things that happens inside of these communities is you don't often have to confront that what you're doing is like, you're an adult playing pretend. Sit with that for a moment, right? You're doing a children's activity as an adult. You're doing it at a level of sophistication, and you are going to produce greater laughs and all of this other stuff. But that is what you're doing. And I will say this as a short defense. I think that, as a society, we have lost a sense of play. That we think it's weird that adults play pretend, riff, like just have general joy. We have this weird like thing about like people being happy outside of really prescripted ways. And improv is like one of those things where it's like, you can do this for free. You can have an imagination for free. And society kind of tells you that's like, well, in order to have fun, you got to go to a restaurant or like go get a massage or whatever else. So, preserving that kind of inventiveness for yourself is something to be really proud of. And one of the big things that I see with indie teams, especially early on, is like there's a little bit of self-hatred that goes into doing an indie show, especially when there isn't a big audience. Because then it's like, I am a comedian, but like I don't feel like a comedian because there are only 3 people here. And I'll also say this, like there are always haters, especially in the early days. Anything that you're trying to do as a creative person, whether it's improv, music, whatever, there's always a bunch of people with their arms crossed, like nitpicking and telling you what's not good and what you should do better. And maybe this isn't for you. You're not that funny of a person. And people have told me I'm not funny. And I eventually got to the point where I was like, you can't tell me this isn't funny or that I'm not funny, because I just have the reps. And what my promise and I'm giving this promise to you. If you continue practicing improv or whatever art form that you're working on, at a certain point, there's a tipping point that hits where suddenly you've gotten enough reps, you've gotten so good at what you do that now people are like, this person is good at this thing, and it's crazy, it's magical, it's amazing, and suddenly the haters vanish, and you're just very good at this thing. I've had this with improv and a couple other things in my personal life, and I will say improv was foundational to that, because I learned that an individual show or the last couple weeks of like not really hitting it the way I wanted to or whatever, in terms of audience, in terms of laughs, in terms of ideas, in terms of whatever, that the long arc of things plays out. And I saw this with a performer, and I will try not to spill too many details about this person, but he was deeply unfunny. Like we came up around a similar time. I might have even been like, he might have been around before me. But in any case, he even did a job that was boring. Like, it was one of those things where it's like, what is this guy doing here? Because he was just kind of comically dull. And it took him a little bit longer, I would say, than most. But by the time he was on stage, everyone was like, this guy's so funny. This guy's like, how did he come up with this? How would he? And it's because he kind of, he was unique in his approach, and he had to figure out his own way. And most people who were teachers, instructors, other improvisers, whatever, didn't know how to overcome his specific obstacles and challenges, because to them, they never thought of it. And you do have to respect that. At a theater, there are lots and lots of people who are there because they naturally have gotten past a lot of things, one of them being on stage. They've gotten past a lot of hangups most other people have. This person was doing something super admirable, which is trying to step so far out of his comfort zone that everyone else there was like, this guy's a fish out of water. So I only say these things to say, like, keep going. The small audiences are good for you, and you will. And I promise, I truly do promise this from the bottom of my soul. I have never seen an improviser who stuck with it not get to the place where they were consistently funny, consistently capable. And a part of that, especially if you're one of those long haul people, indie scenes, indie shows are going to be foundational to that process. Okay. So you just kind of have to like sometimes I think you really have to do a lot of these indie shows to confront the idea that what you're doing is uncool. You enjoy it. The thing that you're doing actually has not only value in terms of producing material, but like for your own personal soul will make you a better person and a happier person, a more self-confident person. And also, like, this is like, improv is so much fun. It is so much fun. And if other people don't like it, it's on them. Okay. So confront that. Just know that there's always someone like this. Try not to focus on them. Focus on yourself and focus on the good time that you're about to have. And that, I think, will get you 70%, 65, 70% of the way toward not being so bothered by a small audience or even a stiff audience, like a big audience that doesn't want to laugh, or there was another show before you that sucked and now the whole audience is like, oh no, we have to sit through an hour of this. Getting through that also. It's chef's kiss, really great. Okay, second tip, and this is more of an improv tip. You need to get the audience to suspend disbelief. Okay, I'm going to say that again. You need to get the audience to suspend disbelief. As an improv team, you are in street clothes. When you walk on stage, there's a very, very thin layer between you and the audience. So we need to make sure the audience remembers that you are acting and they're the audience and they're watching. Okay. And here are some ways that we do that. I'm going to actually start bottom up with this because I think this one's really important. You don't get to break the fourth wall. You don't get to break out of your character. You don't get to lean out to the audience. You don't get to let them know that, like, really and truly you're acting and this isn't who you are. You cannot break the fourth wall. Um, the reason why you can't break the fourth wall is because breaking the fourth wall is radical and interesting whenever the audience is so distinct and there is such a clear separation. But once you break the fourth wall, now you're inviting the audience in. And inviting the audience in means you now have to deal with like a little bit of heckling. And now you're not doing theater, and your connection to your teammates isn't as great. It just causes like this cascade of problems. So you just can't break the fourth wall. Okay. You can't be like, we're actually in a coffee shop, right? You have to continue to be. So even if a big noise happens, right, and you're doing a scene in medieval Europe and the coffee grinder goes off, right, in a big way, you need to be like, oh, yonder, like this thing is happening, right? The chariots are arriving or whatever, right? Second piece of advice under the umbrella of helping the audience suspend disbelief. Give this audience a sense of the stage. So you can pace and show them, kind of where there's living room space. You can build a couch. You can sit in a car. I love sitting in a car. I do it a lot. You can put your leg up on a chair and be at the tip of a boat. You can put your hand on the railing of a skyscraper and spit. Give the audience a clear sense that they are no longer where they are, okay? And that they need to use their minds to fill in some of the space, okay? That cues to the audience member that they're not watching three people in a coffee shop or at the bottom of a bar, basement or whatever. They're now watching two people in a yurt or a guy sitting in a foxhole or whatever, okay? Next thing that you can do to help the audience suspend disbelief is no quippy jokes, which is kind of fourth wall breaking-ish, but slow down. Slow down. Don't try to make a joke. Slow down. And try to listen to your teammate and just give yourself like a split second before you answer. What's it called? This is really like getting into the nitty gritty of it. They say a line, and if you're not really good at slowing down, one of the things that you can do is try to repeat as much of that line back to them, and then add what you're going to say. Okay. So what this might look like is someone going like, spitting off the skyscraper is a felony. You can kill a guy with the spitball. And then the response to the line would have to be something like, you're telling me that spitting off of a skyscraper is a felony? You could kill a guy spitting off of the thing? And the other person goes, yeah, I spit off of this thing every day, right? What this does in terms of slowing things down is audience's attention, not great, especially in some of these environments. Repetition and being really, really painfully clear about like what is happening is important will get you to a place of helping the audience key in on what's happening and not key in on the show. If that makes any sense. Okay. So slow down, and I really do mean that. Slow down the scene. It doesn't have to be line. And if you really need a little bit of help to create that slowness for yourself, you can even try to repeat as much of the other person's line back to them before adding just enough, just a little bit more. And that person can kind of do the same thing to you. Okay. Last thing is start from a very grounded place. Premise is challenging in front of a small audience. And the reason why premise is challenging in front of a small audience is premise improv very often, very, very early on, gives you the game of the scene super fast, right? It's like hey, like, we're McDonald's workers who fart in our burgers, right? Um, that is a lot of information to dump on an audience. So even if you do have a premise in mind, I would say start with like less than half of that premise. So start in the McDonald's. And, you know, let's follow some of the rest of the advice. Start the fryer, right? Turn to your audience. You know, no, not turn to the audience. I would be breaking the fourth wall. Turn to your teammate. Then, you know, if they say something and then you go like, can we just address that we've been farting in these burgers? Okay. It's going to have to be really slow. And if you get derailed from your premise, your idea, that's okay. Save it for another show. Save it for when people are watching the Herald. Save it for when there's 30 people in the audience and everyone's really hyped and they're going to listen to every word that you're saying. But starting from a grounded place, half of your premise idea, a third of your premise idea, or have no premise. Come out and just be like, captain of the ship here, right? What do I mean by that? You can start from a place of who. This is who I am. This is who you are. What? Hey, we're skiing. Hey, we just won a game of tug of war. Hey, we just signed our divorce papers. Or where? But not all three. Maybe two, right? And you really can start from there. Start from there. Really, really slow. Really, really grounded. Nothing crazy is happening. You can't do anything crazy with something like that, right? We're cleaning the tennis courts at the country club. What, where? Great. Half a premise. Nothing funny is happening quite yet. Stay grounded. So these are the ways that you can help the audience suspend disbelief. Teams will try to like clap or get too energetic or whatever to try to get the audience involved or whatever. Nope, you're actually fighting against yourself, right? Because the audience is now like keyed in on the very big personality of the person who's right there. So you can do all of that stuff. Just know when it's time for the scenes to happen, right? You've got to be either at that energy level or a little higher. Or you have to really be super grounded. You really have to be invested in that scene. Okay? Hopefully I'm being clear on that. Third piece of advice here. You have to reverse your thinking about about how you're going to get a laugh. With a very big audience, with a very warm audience, going for a laugh is much easier. And sometimes our improv instructors will say you shouldn't try to be finding a laugh. You should always try to play from a place of being genuine and so on and so forth. I don't believe that. I just don't. And I could be wrong. Maybe I've got more lessons to learn and so on. But with a big warm audience, you can kind of do a little, you can kind of suddenly twist what's going on or jump into a premise or whatever else there is. But instead, what we want to do is we want to listen for where the audience laughs and actively do everything we possibly can to continue having as much of a genuine scene as possible. And if we're going to express an opinion as close to your personal opinion as possible that's maybe lost a couple pixels, right? I think in another video I said, if we're going to talk about your opinion in an improv scene or an opinion in an improv scene, you should let go of nuance. And I would say here, you're going to get a bigger laugh out of like people farting into McDonald's burgers. Wow, that scene sucks. And that was me trying to like find something so funny and crazy. But you will get a bigger laugh out of being somebody who's like, I don't like dogs. And I genuinely, that's happened to me in a scene. I personally, people with pets, I'm like, ugh, oh my God. I feel like someone's going to hear this. Someone's going to see this and they're going to be like, I have a pet, Matt. You love my dog, cat, whatever. Yes. Yeah. I love your dog, your cat, or whatever. But truly, personally, I find pets annoying. I find them so annoying. I just don't get it. I don't get it. They scratch your shit. They're loud. They slobber over things. They're shedding. I personally do not understand the appeal. Just get a baby. Just have a baby. That produces way more laughs. And here's the thing. If it doesn't produce a laugh, it's still your genuine opinion. And so you can just move on to the next thing. So this is what I mean by reversing kind of in an improv scene, especially if you're doing like a Herald or something like that. You're trying to get to the joke. You're trying to get to the premise. You're trying to nail that thing. If you are in a small kind of setting, being genuine to what you believe makes it so that, like, especially if you have that scenario where you get off stage and there are 3 people in the audience and 2 of them are people that you met, and someone just goes like, do you really think that? And you genuinely go like, yeah, I do. You are still not in like a funky place. All right. Now, one of the things that this also does is you don't accidentally become some edgelord trying to say something that like is provocative for the sake of being provocative. So nice little benefit there. But we're listening for a giggle. We're listening for what made somebody laugh. And now we can move on to the next thing that we can do here, which is to capitalize when somebody laughs. Because you have taken improv classes, because you understand premise, because you have learned point of view, heightening, exploration, all these improv techniques, hearing somebody laugh whenever you said something tells you a little bit about what they think why they think it's funny and for what reason. And then you can double down, right? So if I got a giggle out of like, don't like people with pets, don't get it, whatever else, I can, and you saw me kind of do it instinctively, right? Because I kind of made myself laugh a little bit, right? Double down where it's like, go get a baby, right? Or play if this, then that. So if this person believes this thing, hey, I don't like pets or whatever else, if this, then that would be like, well, what would happen if you dated somebody who had a pet? And you're like, I'd dump them, right? If you don't like pets and this other thing was true, then what would happen, right? Or exploration moves. Like, I don't know if you guys watched Mr. Bean. Mr. Bean hates the cars with the 3 wheels, right? Great if this, then that moment is like, he is stranded. He is in dire straits. He is looking for a ride. And what shows up? The 3-wheeled car. And he refuses to get in. And it's like a big laugh, right? And then the other thing is to double down. So if you get a laugh, go further down that train of thought in any kind of way. Elaborate on your opinion. Or if your scene partner said it, right, whatever they said gets you a laugh, get them to continue talking about that thing. Ask them questions. Give them hypotheticals. Set up the scene so that they have to action on their thing. So if someone goes like, I hate pets or whatever, immediately, right, or not immediately, at some point someone should come in with their dog and be like, I just got a new puppy. And we get to watch this person kind of go like, oh, okay, all right, yes, great, you have a dog. That's awesome. Right? So we are now listening for the audience. And part of that is because smaller audience isn't going to be as appreciative of us taking big swings as a warm comedy audience is. Warm comedy audience, they love that you're taking a swing. They want to see where you're going to go. They already think you're funny. Since we don't have that benefit at an indie show, we have to kind of reverse our logic a little bit. Okay? All right. Next piece of advice, you're not always in control of this, but if you do show up at the venue a little bit early, see if you can put some distance between you and the audience. A lot of places, especially a little coffee shop or whatever, will have a tiny stage that's up 3 inches. That's plenty. And I've even sometimes like pushed the chairs back a teeny tiny bit. And that literally produces physical distance between you and the audience. They don't need to be super far back or anything like that, but you want them a little bit further back so that they're distinctly in one place and you're distinctly in another, and you guys have room to play. It'll also incidentally give you physical space to turn into couches and cabinets and levers and periscopes and whatever else. Okay, that one's a shorter piece of advice there. And And I guess the related other thing here is like, and because the audience is a little bit further away, make sure to project. So you have to speak loud enough to overcome your environment, have them hear, and for you to kind of prove in a way that you are acting, you are on stage, and they are listening, and they are off stage. Okay. Last thing, and I think I said this in another video, but bears repeating here. Um, I think I did this in my 6 tips for doing well with difficult improvisers, but like, go into your indie shows thinking about a fundamental, and let go of measuring the show in terms of laughs. That is very difficult for folks because the reason why we want to do comedy is to get the dopamine hit of other people laughing at our stuff and proving that we're funny and so on and so forth. Okay. But acknowledge that it is a tough environment to do consistently funny scenes. If there are 3 people and 2 of them had a bad day and one of them just got off of work, you can be the funniest person. You could have the best set of your life, and those people are not going to laugh. And that's not on you. In a very big audience, even if you're having a bad day, laughing is a social thing. You're around 10 other people. Your mind instinctively goes, I should laugh along. And then your mood kind of lifts. Hey, we're just human beings. But in a very small audience, if the vibes are already low or the other 2 people are laughing, the third person might not laugh because they're just having a tough day. Okay. So the goal cannot be laughs with an audience that's super small. And so what I would say is pick one improv. I say this a lot about lots of different things. So pick one improv fundamental. I am going to yes. That's it. I want to yes as hard as possible at this show. Great. I want to make sure that whenever I'm ending, that I'm like, I'm not adding too much information. I'm following the 5 to 10% rule, 3 to 10% rule. Right? I'm not going to add too long. I want my sentences to be short. I want to make sure I have big, genuine emotional reactions. Right. So these aren't like improv. Like, I want to make sure I heighten every scene. I want to make sure I use this technique every scene. We're talking about fundamentals, which is like, I just want to make sure that no detail gets dropped, right? That I'm fully listening to what my scene partner says. And then at the end of the show, congratulate, like, affirmatively do this. Don't do this like, don't just jump off the stage. Take yourself, give yourself some time, and then congratulate yourself for your level of focus on that thing. Don't worry about the laughs. Worry about, hey, did I yes as hard as I wanted to? Like, that I think is always the best advice. Is like, if your goal is always to yes as hard as possible, in all the ways that you can yes, the other stuff is like, whatever. But or maybe that's just for me because I'm an and monster. And take a little bit of time to be like, I did this thing really well, and that scene was about this, and I made sure that was clear, and I repeated this thing back to this person because I thought it would be kind of important, or I shared a genuine opinion that I really had, and it came through, and maybe the audience chuckled a little bit, and that's validating enough. But you have to change the measurement. And give yourself a little bit of time to remember what I said at the very top of the video, which is like, the reason why I'm doing this is to build up reps so that I'm consistently really great in these scenarios, in these scenes, or whatever, right? That pep talk is super duper helpful. And whenever you go into the show, make that the framing of what you want to do and why, and let go of the laughing part. It'll make the self-hatred piece move out of the way. It'll give you more of a reason to focus in on the grounding because you're not going to be focused in on the laugh. And you'll be playing kind of the long game. Okay. I'm kind of doing all of this under the premise that the small person show, like the tiny audience show, is bad. kind of because 9 times out of 10 they are bad, and it's not on you. Sometimes if they're good, congratulate the absolute shit out of yourself. Okay, you have walked on what I have seen. Super senior, crazy amount of experience. They teach at UCB New York. They teach at UCB LA. And I've seen them at a show where they've for one reason or another had to perform to like 3 people or 5 people or whatever else. And I have watched them bomb. I have watched them do poorly. Okay? And you know what? They just shake it off. And the ones that are insanely good do a lot of these techniques where they stay grounded, they just do the theater, and whenever they hit a laugh, they capitalize it and they move forward. So most of this advice is like psychic advice. Now I'm going to give you some warm-ups that you can do. This is one of my favorite warm-ups. I loved getting people to do them. Game is called Why Are You Late? You're in a circle. One person turns to the next person and goes, hey, why are you late? And the next person, your job is to give an explanation as to why you're late, but the explanation is the plot to a movie as best as you can tell it. So someone might say, why are you late? And you can say, well, my dad was this king, and I was pretty excited about being king. Like all the animals loved him, and we lived on this house that was at the top of this rock. Then my uncle kills my dad with a bunch of antelope that like step all over his head. And I ran away and I made friends with a meerkat and a warthog. And someone would be like, hey, wait a minute. That's the plot from Lion King or whatever. And everyone goes, yay, or ah, or whatever, give it a little reaction. And then the next person in line turns to their left, the person who just told the story about, Lion King. Hey, why are you late? And that person might produce. We'll be like, hey, I was working and I was on my way here, but then all of a sudden I get this package and a bunch of agents follow me around and meet this guy who tells me that I've been living in a computer simulation my entire life. You're in the Matrix. Okay, and it keeps going. Why this warm-up works. Scenes from a movie are grounded. That seems bizarre to say, but there is nothing that happens in the Matrix that isn't grounded, right? That isn't real, because everyone there takes everything that's happening seriously, and there's no person who turns out into the audience and goes, isn't this crazy? This is dumb that this guy has like these glasses that don't have whatever, right? It will give you a sense of like, if you did a scene, right? I did a scene once where I was playing Don Quixote, right? I had the big sword and I was about to like charge towards a windmill, right? And the scene went in a totally different direction. It had nothing to do with Don Quixote, okay? But it started from a grounded place of like, this is a person with a knight staff. He is defending the high honor of whatever, and he has decided that his enemy is this windmill, okay? That's what we mean by grounded. And that's also one of the things about if we're making an honest reaction, why it produces incidental, genuine laughs. Because nobody did laugh at this show. Nobody laughed when I said that I was charging at a windmill. And that's supposed to be kind of a comedic part of Don Quixote, right? It's like this guy's this chivalrous knight is like fighting a windmill or whatever. I don't really remember Don Quixote that well. So if someone is like, what the fuck are you talking about? What's it called? My point still stands that even though that funny, stupid idea didn't get an audience laugh, and it didn't, I still played it from a place of this is what's happening, and this is what's going to move forward, and we're going to continue to do this. And when the scene moved in another direction and we got laughs for a different reason, the scene became about something else, nobody was like, oh, that was a waste. Because I played it from a fully committed place, and that we were doing this, and it was going there. Okay. But if I came in with like, this is funny and stupid that we're doing this, right? There would be this huge there are these odds that we're going to abandon that idea, and the abandonment of that idea is not great. Okay. in that scene where I continue to play the night and I continue wanting to fight this windmill, that through line can sustain itself. I'll put it another way. Grounded scenes and grounded characters can survive a very simple test. That person can continue living. Ungrounded characters and scenes, persons, places, and things would immediately die, or immediately it would not sustain itself at all, because it would be such a bonkers thing. Farting into a burger, I think we can all kind of do that until someone shows up and like arrests us or whatever, right? But now if we play farting burgers, we gotta play, and nobody laughs. Now we gotta fart into some burgers, and that has to be played with the level of groundedness and normalcy that we do with the Matrix. Okay, which is like, there are computer agents, they're viruses, or we're a virus, and they chase us down, and I live in a submarine now. Okay, that's the scene, that's the show, that's how we gotta do it. The Simpsons are yellow, no one questions it, right? It's not a funny thing, it's just reality. It's grounded now. Okay. Second warm-up. Welcome to Blank Town. Very, very easy game. We're all in a circle. One person goes, beep, beep, honk, honk. You don't have to do that. I sometimes just like to go, honk, honk. Welcome to this town. So example is, welcome to Chocolate Town. All right. The next person will say, in Chocolate Town, and they will give us what's true in Chocolate Town. So someone might say, in Chocolate Town, everything is made of chocolate. Third person will say, will continue to add to that. In Chocolate Town, even the children are chocolate. The fourth person might say, in Chocolate Town, people sometimes have a difficult time not biting off their own fingers when they eat, because everything is chocolate. So on and so forth. We're all going to go in a circle. We're going to continue to talk about the things that are true in Chocolate Town. Okay? Until we finally make it to the person who said, this is Chocolate Town, and that person says, and that's Chocolate Town. So the premise that you come up with, you don't really participate in. Some people do it where you can, but I like it where other people have to carry on your idea. What does this do for you? It helps you play if this, then that. Okay? And it shows you that some of the things that happen in Chocolate Town will not be funny, but they will be grounded. They will be things that just happen in Chocolate Town. So it's a little tragic that people might eat their own fingers because their fingers are made of chocolate. What they eat is made of chocolate. Everything's chocolate, so it's like hard to tell. So if it doesn't get a laugh, all good. We're just going to move to the next thing that's true about Chocolate Town. And then we're going to move to the next thing that happens in Chocolate Town, and so on and so forth. So sometimes a grounded idea is just an idea that didn't get a laugh, but now we have to sustain it. All right. So people have to continue to do this thing. People do have this problem, and we have to manage it. Okay. An example of something that isn't sustainable, something you don't want to play anymore. Okay. But Welcome to Blank Town shows you that some of the things in that circle will get a laugh. Some of the things will not. But those things continue to be true. And that's what happens when we ground a scene. We don't abandon those ideas. They become part of our reality, and we have to play them. We have to sustain them. Okay. C. This is, I'm reading from the my outline. Last thing is, last warm-up is you can do some warm-up scenes where nobody is allowed to laugh. Okay. We are going to try to do scenes as seriously as possible. Okay. What will happen here is a little bit of a, like, you're going to have, it's a little bit of reverse psychology, which is we're going to try to do scenes as seriously as possible, as genuinely as possible, as dramatic as possible. And what's going to happen is reality will rip. Something fundamentally will go wrong. Okay. I had this happen once where someone as a gag was trying to make it so that we could not laugh. Someone was like, everyone here in the family or whatever, like, I hate to say this, but looks like it's stage 4 cancer. Like, sorry, there's no easy way to say this. Take a moment amongst yourselves. Then we have to think about, what's it called? medical options that what we can do. And one person in the circle, like before that line had happened, they were like chewing on a candy bar. They were just kind of giving themselves something physically to do. And then as the family is trying to like react, he just kept eating the candy bar. And, because like, he just kind of has this candy bar in his hand. And then you kind of saw him take the candy bar and kind of wrap it a little bit and try to like put it away. And then someone was like, well, if you're going to eat the candy bar, just eat it, And that ended up being like the funny part where now the family is like, instead of dealing with the heavy weight at hand, had this candy bar thing. And the last piece of advice about that warm up is, if it does accidentally, like if you do genuinely fall into a place of laughter, let it go for a little bit. Especially if you're doing this before the show. Because, what's it called? It might work in that show, right? That very genuine little moment. And if it doesn't, your team is laughing with you. Your team is having fun. And that's what it's all about, baby. And I'll say this from personal experience. I no longer fear these small audience shows. And I would say I do pretty well in them. I do pretty well. Is it a blowout every time? No. Like I said, sometimes it's just like it's 4 people. It's a Friday night. I don't know, like 2 of them work together. It was a shitty week at work. They're pissed off or whatever, but they're still here because they want to help out their friend, or they happen to be around. They said, well, let's see a comedy show to make us feel better or whatever. And it didn't work for them. It has nothing to do with you. And when you get to a place where you're like, I'm funny. I know I'm funny. I can do this pretty regularly, but every once in a while the audience isn't that great. It will, a tough show, a small audience, whatever will roll off of you. And you'll go back to just being like, and this other funny thing that happens every once in a while, I'll have a pretty good show or like a not great show. And I'll be like, you know what I wish I'd done? I wish I'd done this one little move instead. And I just got that teeny tiny bit better because the next time a similar scenario shows up, I'll have a different idea. That's it. I wish I had magical tools for managing a small audience. But I think a big part of it is just being realistic about what's going on, focusing on key techniques, and showing yourself a little self-care, a little love. In any case, I think I already said this, but because this is my second take at this video, hit the like button, smash, subscribe. There's like zero production value to these videos. And maybe if this channel ends up being something, I'll invest a little bit. But for now, I'm just glad that, you guys are, if there are any comments, tell me what you want to hear about and I'll give you some free advice or whatever. I'm having a good time. Okay. Stay well, stay happy.